I was born Julia, the first child of two ordinary office workers. You'd think being the firstborn would make me special, but in our house, that wasn't the case. When I was 2, my little brother David came along. From that moment, it was like I became invisible to my mom. She doted on him like he was some kind of miracle baby. Me? I might as well have been a piece of furniture. Dad noticed, of course. He'd try to make up for it, showing me extra affection when Mom wasn't looking. "Come here, princess," he'd say, scooping me up for a hug. "Let's go to the park, just you and me." Those moments were precious, but they couldn't fill the hole left by Mom's indifference. As we grew older, the differences in how we were treated became more obvious. Mom was obsessed with posting photos on social media. Her profile was plastered with pictures of my brother, smiling, laughing, playing. Me? I was lucky if I made it into the background of a shot. One day, Dad finally snapped. "Mary, where are the pictures of Julia?" he demanded, scrolling through Mom's latest album. Mom barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, you know how it is. David's just more photogenic. Such a handsome boy." Dad insisted she take more photos of me, but it was clear her heart wasn't in it. When she did manage to snap a picture, it was always awkward, forced, nothing like the candid, loving shots she took of my brother. School was no better. David was smart, really smart. He'd come home with perfect grades, and Mom would shower him with praise. "Oh, sweetie, you're so brilliant," she'd gush, pinning his tests to the fridge like trophies. Me? I worked my ass off for solid B's, sometimes even A's, but Mom barely noticed. If Dad mentioned my grades, she'd just shrug. "Well, at least she's passing," she'd say, like it was some kind of consolation prize. The weird thing was, I couldn't even be mad at my brother. He was a good kid, always trying to include me, sharing his toys and books. We actually got along great. It wasn't his fault Mom played favorites. The only place I felt truly loved and appreciated was at my grandparents' house. They were Mom's parents, but they couldn't have been more different from her. I think Mom noticed how much time I spent there, but she didn't seem to care. She was too busy fussing over my brother, planning his activities, buying him new toys and clothes. It was like she had forgotten she had a daughter at all. As we got older, the differences in how Mom treated us became even more glaring. It wasn't just about photos anymore. It was about everything. Money, time, attention. All of it went to my brother, while I was left scraping by on whatever was left over. Mom never hesitated to spend money on David. She'd hire all these fancy tutors and coaches for him, determined to develop his talents, as she put it. Piano lessons, advanced math classes, even a freaking fencing instructor at one point. Meanwhile, I was lucky if I got new pencils for school. Why waste money on Julia? I overheard her telling Dad one night. "She's not exactly gifted, is she? It'd be like throwing money down the drain." That stung. I knew I wasn't a genius like my brother, but I wasn't stupid. I tried hard in school, got decent grades, but in Mom's eyes, that was never good enough. When we hit high school, Mom and Dad sat us down for a family meeting. Dad looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his glasses. "Kids," he started, "we need to talk about college." Mom jumped in, her voice sharp. "We don't have money for both of you. You'll need to figure out how to pay for it yourselves." I remember looking at my brother, seeing the same shock on his face that I felt, but even then I had this sinking feeling in my gut. Somehow, I knew this wouldn't apply equally to both of us. My graduation day should have been a celebration. Instead, it felt like a countdown to exile. Mom cornered me after the ceremony, her face set in that pinched expression I knew all too well. "Julia," she said, her voice cold, "you're an adult now. Time to get a job and move out. You have to become independent and not rely on us." Dad at least had the decency to look ashamed, but he didn't say anything. He never did when it really mattered. I was terrified. How was I supposed to make it on my own? I had no idea how to adult, and here I was being kicked out of the nest without even a pair of wings. Thank God for Grandma and Grandpa. When I told them what was happening, they were furious with Mom and Dad, but more importantly, they had my back. "Don't you worry, sweetheart," Grandpa said, his voice gruff with emotion. "We'll help you out if you need it. You're not alone in this." With their support, I managed to enroll in college in another city. It wasn't my dream school, but it was something. I found a tiny apartment and a job waiting tables at a local diner, and just like that, I was on my own. Let me tell you, it wasn't easy. Trying to balance work and school was like trying to juggle flaming torches while riding a unicycle. There were nights I'd come home from a late shift, dead on my feet, only to remember I had a paper due the next day. I lost count of how many times I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was cut out for this. But I kept going. What choice did I have? Every time I thought about quitting, I'd imagine the smug look on Mom's face, the "I told you so" that would inevitably come, and that was enough to keep me pushing forward. 2 years flew by in a blur of textbooks, coffee, and towel shifts. I was just starting to feel like I had a handle on this whole adulting thing when my world tilted on its axis once again. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. I was knee-deep in an essay, but the name on the screen made me pause. David. "Hey, Jules," he said, his voice tight. "Got a minute? I got into college. A really good one." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for him. "But why do you sound like someone died?" There was a long pause. "Mom's paying for it. All of it. Tuition, housing, everything. I didn't know she was going to do this. It's not fair to you." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's not your fault. You deserve it. You're smart as hell, and you worked hard." I said the words. I felt a familiar bitterness rising in my throat. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. After I got off the phone with my brother, I sat there for a long time just staring at the wall. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed Mom's number. She picked up on the third ring. "Julia, this is a surprise. Is it true?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Are you paying for David's college?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "Yes, it's true. I found some money to help your brother get a good education." "But what about me?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "You told us there was no money for college. You kicked me out." "Oh, Julia," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You have to understand. Nurturing your brother has real potential. As for you, well, mediocrity will always find a way to scrape by." I don't remember much of what I said after that. I was too angry, the words pouring out of me like a flood. By the time I hung up, I was shaking. Not 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Dad," I said, his voice stern. "Julia, your mother's very upset. How could you speak to her like that?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Are you kidding me? Did she tell you what she did, what she said to me?" "That's no excuse for." I cut him off. "Why didn't you split the money between us? Why does he get everything, and I get nothing?" There was a long silence. When Dad spoke again, his voice was quieter, embarrassed. "Julia, your mother only told me about the money after David graduated. I didn't know she had savings before that." His admission only fueled my anger. And that makes it okay? You didn't think to ask where this money suddenly came from? You didn't think about me at all? No, now, Julia, that's not fair. Not fair? I practically shouted. You want to talk about not fair? How about the fact that I've been working my ass off for 2 years, barely scraping by, while you and Mom had money tucked away the whole time? How about the fact that I've always been treated like a second-class citizen in this family? Dad tried to interject, but I was on a roll now. You didn't realize because you never bothered to look. You never stood up for me, never questioned Mom's treatment of me. You just went along with it like always. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Dad finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Julia, I'm sorry. I should have done more. But sorry wasn't enough. As I ended the call, I felt something shift inside me. I realized something important. I didn't need their approval. I was going to make it with or without their support. The aftermath of that phone call with Dad was like a tsunami hitting our family. A few days later, David called again. His voice was hushed, like he was afraid of being overheard. Jules, things are crazy here, he said. Dad and Mom had this massive fight. I've never seen Dad so angry. He said he was thinking about divorce. The word hung in the air between us, divorce. It seemed impossible. Despite everything, I'd never imagined my parents splitting up. Are you okay? I asked, suddenly worried about my brother caught in the middle of this mess. He sighed. I'm fine. It's just weird, you know? They're not yelling anymore, but the silence is almost worse. We talked for a while longer, and I felt a pang of guilt. This wasn't his fault, but he was suffering for it too. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, my phone rang again. Mom, I said. Julia, she said, her voice sharp with tension. You need to talk to your father. I blinked, caught off guard. What? Tell him you don't have any complaints, that everything's fine between us? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, this was what she cared about. Are you serious right now? I asked, my voice rising. You want me to lie to Dad so you can sweep this under the rug? Don't be dramatic, Julia, she snapped. This is a family matter. We need to present a united front. Something inside me snapped. All the years of feeling less than, of being pushed aside, of trying to earn her love. It all came to a head in that moment. You know what, Mom? I said, my voice cold. Why don't you solve your problems on your own? Isn't that what you told me when I graduated, when you kicked me out? I hung up, my hands shaking. Over the next few weeks, David kept me updated on the situation at home. Mom and Dad were barely speaking to each other. The atmosphere in the house was tense, he said, like the air before a thunderstorm. I don't think they're actually going to get divorced, he told me during one of our calls, but things are not good. Part of me felt guilty. Had I caused this? But another part, a louder part, was angry. Angry at Mom for her years of favoritism and manipulation, and angry at Dad for not standing up for me sooner. As the weeks turned into months, I threw myself into my studies and work. I picked up extra shifts at the diner, applied for scholarships, did whatever I could to make sure I didn't need a cent from my parents. Life has a funny way of planting seeds in your mind. It all started on a random Tuesday. I was at the campus coffee shop with my friend Sarah, venting about the whole college money fiasco for the 10th time. Sarah listened patiently, stirring her latte. Then, out of nowhere, she said, You know, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were adopted or something. I mean, who treats their own kid like that? I laughed it off at first, but later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Sarah's words kept echoing in my head. Adopted. It was ridiculous, right? But the next day, I found myself scrolling through Mom's social media. She'd always been obsessed with posting family photos, especially of my brother. As I dug deeper into the older albums, I noticed something strange. There were plenty of photos of Mom pregnant with my brother, her hands cradling her swollen belly, Dad beaming beside her. But when I tried to find similar photos from before I was born, nothing, not a single shot of Mom pregnant with me. For days, I couldn't shake the idea. It would explain so much. Mom's favoritism, the constant feeling of being an outsider in my own family. But it was crazy, right? Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to know the truth one way or another, and there was only one way to find out for sure. With shaking hands, I dialed David's number. "Hey, Jules, what's up?" he answered, sounding cheerful. I took a deep breath. "I need a favor, a big one." "Okay," he said, suddenly cautious. "What kind of favor?" "I need you to get me some of Mom and Dad's DNA. Hair, maybe, or a cheek swab, if you can manage it." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Jules, what's this about?" I closed my eyes, steeling myself. "I want to do a DNA test to see if I'm really their daughter." "What?" he exclaimed. "Julia, that's crazy. Of course, you're their daughter." "Where is this coming from?" I explained my suspicions. The lack of pregnancy photos, Mom's treatment of me. As I spoke, I realized how insane it all sounded, but my brother listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. "Jules, I don't think this is a good idea. It's going to cause a lot of trouble if Mom and Dad find out. Please," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to know. I can't explain it, but I need to know." A week later, a package arrived at my apartment. Inside were 4 sealed plastic bags, each containing a few strands of hair. Mom, Dad, my brother, and a note that read, "I hope you find what you're looking for. Love you, sis." The next day, I took all my savings and went to a local clinic that offered DNA testing. The technician raised an eyebrow at my request for a full family comparison, but she didn't ask questions. "Results will be ready in about 2 weeks," she said, handing me a receipt. 2 weeks of wondering, second-guessing, and imagining every possible outcome. The day the results came, I felt like I was in a dream, or maybe a nightmare. I stood in my tiny apartment, staring at the envelope in my hands, afraid to open it. Finally, with trembling fingers, I tore it open. As I read the results, I felt the floor drop out from under me. I was my parents' daughter, but my brother, he was only Mom's son, not Dad's. The implications hit me like a truck. Mom had cheated on Dad. My brother was only my half-brother. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. I don't know how long I sat there, trying to process it all. Eventually, I picked up my phone and called David. "Jules," he answered, sounding worried. "Are you okay? Did you get the results?" I took a deep breath. "Yeah, I did, and you might want to sit down for this." I told him everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. That's impossible," he finally said, his voice shaking. "There must be some mistake." "I wish there was," I said softly, "but the test is pretty clear." We talked for hours, trying to make sense of it all. In the end, we agreed to keep it quiet for now. We both needed time to process before deciding what to do next. For days, I agonized over what to do with this information. Should I tell Dad? He deserved to know the truth, but it would devastate him. Maybe it would be kinder to keep it secret to protect him from this pain. I was still wrestling with this dilemma when Grandma called. Her voice was tight with anger. "Julia, sweetheart, I need to tell you something," she said. "Your mother came to visit us today. She asked us to change our will. She wanted us to disinherit you in favor of your brother." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What? Why?" "Oh, Julia," Grandma sighed. "She said such awful things about you, called you arrogant, said you were obsessed with money. She even claimed you were trying to deceive us and take our property." Tears stung my eyes. After everything, Mom was still trying to hurt me, to take away the only family that had always supported me. "What did you say?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. "We told her to get out," Grandma said firmly. "We won't stand for anyone speaking about you that way, not even your mother." As I hung up the phone, all my doubts about revealing the DNA test results vanished. Mom had made her choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. Thanksgiving, a time for family, gratitude, and apparently, in my family's case, for long-buried secrets to explode like a damn grenade at the dinner table. It all started when David called me a week before the holiday. "Hey, Jules, just a heads up. Mom's planning this big family Thanksgiving dinner." "Oh," I said, my stomach already nodding. "And let me guess, I'm not invited." He sighed. "You got it. I'm sorry, sis. I thought you should know." I made my decision in that moment. When I showed up at the house, Dad's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Julia, I didn't know you were coming." Mom's reaction was less enthusiastic. Her smile was so forced it looked painful. "Julia, what a surprise." We all gathered in the living room, the air thick with tension. Mom couldn't wait to start in on me. "Julia," she began, her voice sickly sweet, "I think we need to talk about your behavior lately. You've been so difficult, causing problems between your father and me." I sat there, letting her words wash over me, all the accusations, the guilt-tripping, the manipulation. Finally, when she paused for breath, I spoke. "Mom, can I ask you something?" My voice was calm, steady. "Where does all this favoritism towards my brother come from?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Favoritism? I don't know what you're talking about. I've always loved you both equally. It's not my fault you turned out to be so ungrateful and arrogant." I couldn't help but laugh. "Is that why you asked Grandma and Grandpa to disinherit me?" The room went dead silent. Dad turned to Mom, his face a storm cloud. "You did what?" Mom's face went red. "She's lying. Julia's always been a liar. You know that." I stood up, my heart pounding. "Oh, I'm the liar. That's rich, Mom. Really rich." I pulled out the DNA test results from my bag. "If anyone here is a liar, it's you." Mom's face went from red to white in an instant. "What is that?" I turned to Dad, my heart breaking for him. "Dad, I'm so sorry, but you need to know the truth." "David, he's not your son." Dad looked like he'd been hit by a truck. He turned to Mom, his voice barely a whisper. "Mary, what is she talking about?" Mom exploded. "How dare you, you ungrateful little." "Enough," Dad roared, silencing her. He turned back to me. "Julia, explain now." So I did. I told him everything. My suspicions, the DNA test, the results. As I spoke, I watched the color drain from Mom's face. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it, but then, like a balloon deflating, she seemed to collapse on herself. "Guess," she whispered. "It's true." The story came out in bits and pieces. Dad's best friend, a rich businessman, a lifelong affair. My brother, the product of that affair. I loved him. Mom said, tears streaming down her face. I'd wanted to be with him, but he wouldn't leave his wife, so he gave me money instead for David's education, for everything. I looked at my brother. He was staring at Mom like he'd never seen her before. I can't, he stammered, then stood up abruptly. I need some air. The room fell into a heavy silence. The turkey in the oven dinged, a jarring reminder of the holiday we were supposed to be celebrating. I looked around at my broken family. Dad slumped in his chair, looking like his whole world had crumbled. Mom crying silently in the corner, my brother somewhere outside, probably questioning his entire existence, and me. I felt empty. Vindicated, yes, but also incredibly sad. This was the truth I'd fought so hard to uncover, but as I stood there in the wreckage of our family's Thanksgiving, I couldn't help but wonder, was the truth really worth all this? Dad wasted no time. Within a week, he'd filed for divorce. He was a changed man. The easygoing, often passive father I'd known was gone, replaced by someone driven by a cold, determined anger. I want compensation, he told his lawyer, for every year of lies, every moment of deception. And he got it. Between Mom and his former best friend, Dad received a substantial settlement. When he told me about it, his eyes were hard, but there was a softness there when he looked at me. "This is for you, Julia," he said, handing me a check that made my eyes bulge. "You deserve it for everything you've been through, for being the one to bring the truth to light." I tried to refuse, but he wouldn't hear of it. "Take it," he insisted. "Consider it the college fund you should have had all along." So I did. I paid for my final year of college outright. No more scrimping and saving, no more double shifts at the diner, and there was still enough left over that I could start thinking about a down payment on a small apartment. Somehow, it was surreal. My brother surprised us all when his biological father reached out, offering money and a chance at a relationship. My brother shut him down hard. He dropped out of the college Mom had paid for, saying it felt tainted now. Instead, he got a job, saved up, and enrolled in a state school. I've never been prouder of him. As for Mom, well, that's a different story. Dad wants nothing to do with her, and neither do Grandma and Grandpa. They were horrified when they learned the full truth, and me. I blocked her number. The years of favoritism, the lies, the attempt to turn my grandparents against me. It's too much. Maybe someday I'll be ready to talk to her again, but not now. Not for a long time. It's been a year since that Thanksgiving. Tad's doing better. He started dating again, tentatively. My brother's thriving in his new school. I graduated college, landed a job I love, and I'm saving up for that house. We still do family dinners, but they're different now. It's usually just me, Dad, David, and our grandparents. Was it worth it? That's a question I've asked myself a lot this past year, and I still don't know the answer to it.